And I want to give a special thank you and welcome to our guest musicians this evening, both the vocalists and the brass ensemble. If you're new to First Parish Church, welcome. Please help yourself to any literature that you find in our foyer or elsewhere for that matter. And I want to let you know about our Christmas Eve services, which are listed on the back of your program. This evening features music and words from New England, and Christmassy words and music from New England. And our opening words are from Erica Hewitt, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister who lives in Maine. This is the season of endings and beginnings, when the small sign of dawn pierced through the night and something new is born. But first comes the waiting. First comes the lessons of endings and beginnings. The presence of life, the sheltering spirit of love, grieves with those sweeping up the debris of loss, waits with those who restlessly reach out for change, grants us courage in the night to guard each other's dreams for this holy, wondrous universe. Grant us, O universe unfolding in mystery, a sense of your timing. May we loosen our grip on that which doesn't serve us, leaving behind that which we have outworn and outgrown. Teach us the lessons of new beginnings. Remind us that such waitings and endings may be a starting place, a planting of seeds which bring to birth what is ready to be born. Something right and just and different, a new song, a deeper relationship, a fuller love in the fullness of time. Stopping by the woods on a snowy evening is from New England poet Robert Frost's book, New Hampshire, although it was written in Vermont, in the summer, actually, in between years that he spent in Michigan at the University of Michigan, teaching there. This next poem, Christmas Trees, is also by Robert Frost. A Christmas Circular Letter. The city had withdrawn into itself, left at last the country to the country, when between whirls of snow not come to lie, and whirls of foliage not yet laid, there drove a stranger to our yard, who looked the city, yet in country fashion, in that there he sat and waited till he drew us out, a buttoning coats to ask who he was. He proved to be the city come again, to look for something it had left behind. It could not do without and keep its Christmas. He asked if I would sell my Christmas trees, my woods, the young fir balsams, like a place where houses are all churches and have spires. I hadn't thought of them as Christmas trees. I doubt if I was tempted for a moment to sell them off their feet to go in cars and leave the slope behind the house all bare, where the sun shines now no warmer than the moon. I'd hate to have them know it if I was. Yet more I'd hate to hold my trees except as others hold theirs or refuse for them beyond the time of profitable growth. The trial by market everything must come to. I dallied so much with the thought of selling, then whether from mistaken courtesy and fear of seeming short of speech, or whether from hope of hearing good of what was mine, I said, there aren't enough to be worthwhile. I could soon tell you how many they would cut. You would let me look them over. You could look, but don't expect I'm going to let you have them. Pasture they spring in, and some in clumps too close that lop each other of boughs, but not a few quite solitary and having equal boughs all round and round. The latter he nodded yes to, or paused to say beneath some lovelier one, with a buyer's moderation, that would do. I thought so too, but wasn't there to say so. We climbed the pasture on the south, crossed over, and came down on the north. He said, 1,000. 1,000 Christmas trees? At what a piece? He felt some need of softening that to me. 1,000 trees would come to $30. Then I was certain I had never meant to let him have them, never show surprise, but $30 seemed so small beside the extent of pasture I should strip. 3 cents, for that was what they figured out a piece. 3 cents, so small beside the dollar friends I should be writing to within the hour, would pay in cities for good trees like those. Regular vestry trees, whole Sunday schools could hang enough on to pick off enough. 1,000 Christmas trees I didn't know I had, worth 3 cents more to give away than to sell, as may be shown by a simple calculation. Too bad I couldn't lay one in a letter. I can't help wishing I could send you one and wishing you herewith a Merry Christmas. Our first carol to sing together this evening is by the Unitarian minister Edmund Sears, who was serving the Unitarian Church in Wayland, Massachusetts, not far from here, when he wrote It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. Written in 1849, just as the Mexican-American War had ended, it's a call for those who are singing and hearing the song to listen to the message of the angels and bring an end to war. Please join in singing. Daniel Pinkham was born in 1923, just about 40 miles east of here in Lynn, Massachusetts, and his connections to the Boston area run deep. He studied at Harvard and with well-known composers such as Aaron Copland and Samuel Barber. He served as the music director at King's Chapel, the Unitarian Universalist Church in Boston, for 42 years, and was a faculty member at New England Conservatory for 47 years. His music has been heard in churches, concert halls, and schools all over New England for decades. The Christmas Cantata is a 20th century piece that has plenty of allusions to older styles of music. It was written in 1957, and some of the harmonies you will hear certainly sound like mid-20th century. Much of the music may sound a lot older to you because Pinkham was inspired by the musical ideas of the Renaissance while telling the Christmas story. The first movement, Whom Do You See, Shepherds, begins with an insistent sound and obscure harmonies as we demand to know what the shepherds have seen. The answer comes in the form of a strange but somehow comforting lullaby. The second movement, O Great Mystery, opens with a mysterious trumpet line before the chant-like sounds arise from the choir, brass quintet, and organ. And the third movement, Glory to God in the Highest, opens as though the choir and quintet are far down the road, perhaps in another city. They get closer as the movement progresses, finally arriving for a triumphant conclusion. This interpretation is just one of the many that the texts have received over the years. As you hear this old Latin text with a 20th century musical sound that references the 15th century, think through the ages and generations of composers and followers who have said and sung these words. Madeleine L'Engle is the author best known for her young adult novel, A Wrinkle in Time. But she's also written many poems, many of them drawing on Christian imagery and particularly the birth of Jesus. While she lived most of her life in New York, she lived for a while, for about a decade, in Goshen, Connecticut, where she directed choir at the Congregational Church. And she also died in Connecticut, in Litchfield. The Bethlehem explosion. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that the world should be enrolled. And Joseph, too, went up from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David that is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and family of David, to be enrolled with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. Luke chapter 1, verses 1, 4, and 5. The chemistry lab at school was in an old greenhouse, surrounded by ancient live oaks garnished with Spanish moss. The experiment I remember most was pouring a quart of clear fluid into a glass jar and dropping into it, grain by grain, salt-sized crystals until they layered like white sand on the floor of the jar. One more grain, and suddenly, water and crystal burst into a living, moving pattern, a silent, quietly violent explosion. The teacher told us that only when we supersaturated the solution would come the precipitation. The little town was like the glass jar in our lab. One by one they came, grain by grain, all those of the house of David like grains of sand to be counted. The inn was full. When Joseph knocked, his wife was already in labor. There was no room even for compassion until the barn was offered. That was the precipitating factor. A child was born, and the pattern changed forever, the cosmos shaken with the silent explosion. Rejoice was composed also in a summer, the summer of 2001, in Gwyneth Walker's studio at the Brainstorm Dairy Farm in Braintree, Vermont. It was commissioned as a performance piece for a wedding celebration, or a wedding anniversary celebration, and the work was premiered by the Luther College Choirs and Orchestra. Rejoice is a 21st century musical setting of 3 traditional Christmas carols or poems. The intent of the music is to explore the dramatic character of each song. So What Child Is This focuses on the question aspect of the lyrics. What child is this? Therefore, the answer, this is Christ the King. And the answer is delayed for 2 verses. The first round of questions are posed by the tenors and basses, with the soprano and alto voices interjecting additional phrases of, what child is this? The second verse reverses the roles, and then comes the much anticipated refrain. The third verse presents the chorus in static harmonies, while the accompaniment provides the rapid, shimmering patterns in the piano reflective of the lyrics. So bring him incense, gold, and myrrh. And the final refrain, the answer is triumphant. Love Came Down at Christmas is a new setting of the poem by the pre-Raphaelite poet Christina Rossetti. Here, the image of descending from the title is the focus of the introduction, marked gently as love descending from heaven or snow falling. The pattern of stepwise descent is then taken up by the chorus. The essence of this song is gentleness and simplicity. The tonality throughout is C major, and the meter is 4/4. At the end, while the chorus holds the final chord, a little cadenza is heard in the accompaniment, perhaps a single snowflake descending at Christmas time. A bridge passage leads into Good Christian Friends Rejoice. Like has been done with many of the Christmas carols in our hymnal, Gwyneth Walker, who has written for UU churches, has replaced the word men with a more inclusive term, in this case, friends. This is a joyful, lilting song, and many extra rejoices are included, and the tempo is quick. And the chorus is called upon to sing with as much energy as possible. That's going to be fun to watch. One small note for the astute listener: the composer, who was, as you recall, a resident of a family-owned dairy farm, often inserts cows into her lyrics. Our next carol is my favorite Christmas carol. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, and I'm very opinionated about it because it's set to a number of different hymn tunes, and the one that's in our Unitarian Universalist hymnal is not my favorite. We're going to sing it to my favorite one, right, Mike? Yeah. So it was written by the Unitarian poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who was born in Portland, Maine, and while it was still a part of Massachusetts. And he lived most of his life in Massachusetts proper, where he was a professor and writer. We don't usually get to hear all of the verses of this song, and without those verses, the song tells a story of despair about hate and war, and then returns to the uplifting response from the good bells that good shall prevail. When we add in the seldom heard verses, 2 of 3 of which we've added in today, you'll see that the song is even more specifically a lament about the existence of slavery and the ongoing civil war that this song was written in the middle of. Let us all join in singing. These closing words are my own, since despite my Midwestern twang, I live in New England now, and I am therefore a New England author. And thank you all for welcoming me here. This Christmas season and always, May you have rejoicing. May you experience mystery and wonder, and may you find peace. Let us take those things that we have found here out into the world and share them widely with love. And now we leave you with the crack of a whip with another New England composer, Leroy Anderson's Sleigh Ride. Leroy Anderson was born in Cambridge and died in Woodbury, Connecticut.
We need a little audience participation for this one. You want to do your clap.